Medieval cheese aged for months in a cave and came out harder, sharper, and safer to eat than the day it was made. Your block of supermarket cheese was made in less than 24 hours, wrapped in plastic, and starts going bad the moment you open it. But here's the part that should bother you. Medieval cheese had two ingredients, milk and rennet. Your cheese? Flip it over and read the label. You'll find milk protein concentrates, modified food starch, sodium phosphate, sorbic acid, and sometimes a dozen more. Those extra ingredients aren't there to make it better. They're there because the process that makes cheese actually work was removed. And without that process, the cheese can't hold itself together. Medieval peasants didn't just make cheese that tasted better, they made cheese that fed beneficial bacteria straight into their gut with every bite. A living food that strengthened digestion, preserved itself without refrigeration, and provided nutrition through the harshest winters in European history. Today, we're walking into the medieval dairy, because modern cheese isn't cheese in the way a medieval peasant would recognize it. And the thing they knew, the one thing the industry stripped out, is exactly what your gut has been missing. The historical stage. Switzerland, 1115 AD. Monks at the Abbey of Bellelay in the Jura Mountains begin keeping records of cheese production. Because by the 12th century, cheese wasn't a luxury, it was survival. A single Alpine peasant family kept between 2 and 6 cows. During the summer months, those cows produced more milk than a family could drink. Without refrigeration, raw milk spoils within hours. So every drop that couldn't be consumed that day had to become cheese, or it was wasted. This was the difference between starving in February and making it to spring. That's why Swiss mountain communities developed the Alp system. During summer, entire villages would drive their cattle up into high mountain pastures, sometimes above 6,000 feet. Families would live in small stone huts for 3 to 4 months, milking cows twice a day and turning every drop into cheese. Walk into one of those alpine huts during cheese making, and the first thing you'd notice is the heat. A copper kettle, big enough to sit in, hung over an open fire. Inside it, 20 to 30 gallons of raw milk, still warm from the cow, heated slowly while someone stirred with a long wooden paddle. The smell would hit you next. Warm, sweet, and slightly animal. The milk was alive. It had come straight from the udder without being filtered through machines or blasted with heat. Floating in that milk were billions of bacteria: Lactobacillus, Streptococcus thermophilus, Propionibacterium, dozens of species, all native to the cow, the pasture, the barn, and the air of that specific mountain. And here's the part that nobody tells you. Those bacteria weren't contamination. They were the entire technology. When the milk reached the right temperature, the cheesemaker added rennet, a substance from the stomach lining of a young calf. The rennet contained enzymes that cause the milk to thicken and split into 2 parts: solid curds and liquid whey. The cheesemaker cut the curds with a wooden tool called a cheese harp, drained the whey, pressed the curds into a mold, and salted the outside. Then came the part that made medieval cheese completely different from what you buy today. The wheel went into a cave, or a cellar, or a stone room cut into the mountainside, somewhere cool, damp, and dark. And it sat there, for months, sometimes a year, sometimes longer. During those months, the billions of bacteria that had been in the raw milk didn't die. They went to work. And what they built during that time is the secret the modern cheese industry erased. The complete system. Here's what was happening inside that cave. While the cheese sat in the dark, the bacteria were eating. Specifically, they were breaking down lactose, the sugar in milk, and converting it into lactic acid. This did 2 things at once. First, the acid dropped the pH of the cheese to a level where harmful bacteria couldn't survive. Salmonella, E. coli, Listeria, all of them need a neutral environment. The lactic acid made the cheese hostile territory. Second, and this is the part that changes everything, the bacteria were breaking down the proteins in the milk. Casein, the main protein in cheese, is a large, complex molecule. Your stomach has to work hard to digest it, but during months of aging, the bacteria slowly chop those protein chains into smaller and smaller pieces. Peptides, then amino acids. They were pre-digesting the cheese for you. In 2019, researchers at the University of Naples published a study analysing traditionally aged raw milk cheeses from southern Italy. They found that cheeses aged for 12 months or longer contained significantly higher levels of bioactive peptides, compounds with measurable anti-inflammatory and antioxidant properties, than cheeses aged for shorter periods. The longer the bacteria worked, the more health-promoting compounds they created. But the bacteria weren't alone. The cave itself was part of the system. Those stone walls were covered in a thin layer of natural mold. Specific species, primarily Penicillium, the same family that gave us the antibiotic penicillin. When a wheel of cheese sat against those walls for months, the mold colonized the rind. It created a protective outer shell that kept harmful organisms out while allowing the cheese to breathe. Moisture could escape slowly. Air could enter gently. The rind was a living barrier, built by the environment, not by a factory. In the Comté region of eastern France, some aging cellars have been in continuous use since the 13th century. The mold colonies on those walls are over 700 years old. Cheesemakers there call the cellar a living partner. The same cellar produces a different cheese than a cellar 2 miles away, even if the milk and the method are identical. The cave makes the cheese. The French have a word for this: terroir. It means the taste of a place. And here's what connected the entire system: the cow, the grass, the raw milk, the bacteria, the rennet, the cave, the mold, the time. Every single element worked together. Change one piece and the whole thing shifts. A cow eating wild alpine grass in July produced different milk than the same cow eating hay in December. The bacteria in summer milk were different from the bacteria in winter milk. Cheesemakers knew this without understanding the science. They adjusted instinctively. Less rennet in summer when the milk was richer. More time in the cave when the curds were softer. They were managing a living ecosystem, and they'd been doing it successfully for over 1,000 years. So why did we stop a superior system? The answer begins with one man, one patent, and a decision that changed cheese forever. The destruction. In 1851, an American dairyman named Jesse Williams opened the first cheese factory in Oneida County, New York. Before Williams, every farm made its own cheese. After Williams, cheese became an industrial product. But the real destruction didn't come from factories. It came from what factories demanded. Raw milk is unpredictable. Every batch is different. The bacteria vary by season, by cow, by pasture. For a factory trying to produce 1,000 identical blocks of cheese per day, that variation is a nightmare. You can't standardize a living system, so the industry killed it. In 1864, Louis Pasteur published his work on heating liquids to kill bacteria. By the early 1900s, large-scale dairies had adopted pasteurization for cheese milk. Every bacterium in the milk, the beneficial ones and the harmful ones, destroyed in seconds. A clean slate, a dead liquid. Then they added back a handful of lab-grown bacterial strains, 2 or 3 species selected for speed and predictability. The wild ecosystem that raw milk carried, the dozens of species that had co-evolved with cows and pastures for millennia, replaced with a laboratory monoculture. This is the moment cheese died. Because those 2 or 3 lab strains can produce acid fast. They can make curds form in hours. But they cannot do what a diverse wild colony does over months of aging. They can't produce the full range of enzymes. They can't break down casein into the same bioactive peptides. They can't build the same complexity of flavour or the same health-promoting compounds. They do one job. The wild colony did hundreds. In 2014, a team at the University of Parma in Italy compared the bacterial diversity of traditionally made Parmigiano Reggiano with industrially produced cheese. The traditional cheese contained over 150 distinct bacterial species. The industrial cheese contained fewer than 10. Same label, same shape, but a completely different biology. And then the industry went further. Aging cheese in caves for 12 months costs money. You need space, labour and time. Time is the enemy of profit, so they found shortcuts. Modern processed cheese doesn't age at all. It's made by grinding up young cheese, melting it with emulsifying salts like sodium citrate and sodium phosphate, and reforming it into blocks or slices. The emulsifiers create a smooth, uniform texture without any bacterial activity. Processed cheese is not aged, it's engineered. James L. Kraft patented his processed cheese method in 1916. By the 1950s, Kraft singles had become the default cheese in American homes, a product that a medieval cheesemaker wouldn't recognize as food. We replaced months of cave aging with chemical emulsifiers. We replaced a living bacterial ecosystem with a laboratory monoculture. We replaced raw milk from pastured cows with pooled, pasteurized, homogenized milk from grain-fed animals kept indoors. And here's the pattern. The living system that pre-digested cheese for your gut was removed. Then the industry sold you probiotic supplements to replace the gut bacteria you lost because your cheese no longer contains them. They broke the food, then sold you the fix. The modern scam. And it gets worse, because the industry knows you're catching on. They see you searching for artisan cheese, aged cheese, raw milk cheese. They see the wellness market growing, so they're adapting. Walk down the cheese aisle, and you'll see words like cave-aged, artisan, traditionally crafted, and small batch on labels everywhere. Those words cost you $8 to $15 more per pound. But here's the trick. There is no legal definition of artisan cheese in the United States. None. Any factory can print artisan on the label. Same for cave-aged. Many so-called cave-aged cheeses spend a few weeks in a refrigerated room designed to look like a cave. Concrete walls, controlled humidity, artificial mold sprayed on the rind. The cheese never touched real stone. The rind never grew naturally. The bacteria were never wild. And then there's aged cheese. You see sharp cheddar and assume it's been sitting in a cellar getting better for a year or two. In reality, most sharp cheddars in the supermarket are aged for 60 to 90 days. The sharp flavour isn't from slow bacterial breakdown over a year. It's from lipase enzymes added during production to simulate the taste of aged cheese in a fraction of the time. The flavour is fake while the price is premium. Want to know what you're actually buying? Grab a block of cheese from your fridge right now. Read the ingredients. Real traditionally made cheese has a short list. Milk, salt, rennet, cultures. That's it. If you see sodium phosphate, you're holding processed cheese. If you see modified food starch, that's a filler to replace the protein structure that real aging would have created. If you see natamycin, that's an antifungal sprayed on the surface because the cheese has no natural rind to protect itself. A medieval wheel of cheese protected itself. Your block of cheese needs a chemical bodyguard because it was never given the time to build its own defences. Practical application. But here's the good news. You don't need a Swiss mountain hut. The medieval method scales down to a kitchen counter, and the result is still 1,000 times more alive than anything in the supermarket dairy aisle. Here's the simplest version of what medieval peasants did, and you can start it this weekend. Step 1. Get raw milk if your state allows it. If not, get the least processed whole milk you can find. Non-homogenized, cream top, pasteurized at the lowest legal temperature. Avoid ultra-pasteurized. Ultra-pasteurization kills everything, and the milk won't form proper curds. Step 2. Heat 1 gallon of milk in a stainless steel pot to 86 degrees Fahrenheit. That's barely warm. A medieval peasant used fresh milk straight from the cow, which comes out at about 98 degrees. They let it cool slightly, and so will you. Step 3. Add mesophilic culture. This is a packet of freeze-dried bacteria you can buy online for a few dollars. It's not the wild colony a medieval cow carried, but it's far closer than anything a factory uses. Stir it in gently. Wait 45 minutes. Step 4. Add liquid rennet, diluted in a quarter cup of cool water. Stir for 30 seconds, then stop. Do not touch the pot for 1 hour. The rennet will do the work. When you come back, the milk will have set into a soft white mass that looks like tofu. That's your curd. Step 5. Cut the curd into half-inch cubes using a long knife. Stir gently for 30 minutes while slowly raising the temperature to 100 degrees. This is the step where patience matters. Medieval cheesemakers spent more time on this step than any other. The slower you go, the better the texture. Step 6. Drain the whey through cheesecloth. Press the curds into a mould. You can use a proper cheese mould or a plastic container with holes drilled in the bottom. Press with a weight, about 10 pounds, for 12 hours. Flip it once at the 6-hour mark. Step 7. Salt the outside of the cheese by rubbing coarse salt over every surface. This draws out moisture and begins forming the rind. Step 8. And this is the step the industry removed. Age it. Put the cheese on a wooden board in the coolest spot in your house. A basement shelf, a wine fridge set to 50 to 55 degrees, even a cool closet. Flip it every day for the first 2 weeks. After that, flip it every few days. The rind will start to form. It might get a little fuzzy. That's natural mold. Wipe it with a cloth dipped in salt water. Medieval cheesemakers did the exact same thing. After 60 days, you have a young farmhouse cheese with real bacterial cultures, a real rind, and real flavour that no factory can replicate. Here's what to expect. Your first cheese will probably crack a little or develop uneven mould. That's normal. You're learning to manage a living system, not operate a machine. The second one will be better. By the 4th or 5th, you'll have a process that feels natural. Common mistake: don't age cheese in a sealed plastic container. The cheese needs to breathe. Plastic traps moisture and breeds the wrong kind of mould. Use wood, wax paper, or open air. Medieval cheesemakers never wrapped anything in plastic because plastic didn't exist, and the cheese was better for it. One more thing: don't throw out the whey. That yellow liquid you drained off is packed with protein and lactobacillus bacteria. Medieval peasants drank it straight, fed it to animals, or used it to soak grains. It's a probiotic in its own right. You poured it down the drain because nobody told you it was valuable. Cheese isn't the enemy. Factory cheese is. The medieval peasant with her copper kettle and stone cellar wasn't making a primitive product. She was managing a living ecosystem that pre-digested food, preserved nutrition, and fed her family's gut bacteria with every meal. We traded all of that for a plastic-wrapped block that needs chemicals just to hold its shape. If you want more forgotten knowledge that the modern world buried, subscribe to Medieval Way. We're digging up the methods that actually worked, the ones the industry doesn't want you to remember. And if this video changed how you think about that block in your fridge, share it with someone who deserves to know what real cheese is. They might not be lactose intolerant. They might just be intolerant of what the industry did to cheese.